Simplify. Negative 4i times the square root of negative 60. On this problem, I can see that I have this negative 4i being multiplied by the radical, so I can go ahead and pull that negative 4i out, and then I'm going to put my parentheses here, but I don't know what the square root of negative 60 is. How do I take a square root of a negative? And what does this I actually mean? Now let's hear Chloe's latest tips and tricks. She wants you to know that I is equal to the square root of negative 1. When you have I to the first power, it's equal to I. When you have I squared, it's equal to negative 1. When you have I cubed, it's equal to negative I. And when you have I to the fourth power, it's equal to 1. If you have an exponent on I that is greater than or equal to 5, follow these steps. First, take the exponent and divide it by 4. Then you're going to take the number to the left of the decimal point in the quotient and multiply it by 4. Then you're going to take the product and subtract it from the original exponent, and the difference is the new exponent on I. Now that we have Chloe's tips and tricks, we can see that I is equal to the square root of negative 1. I represents an imaginary number. Anytime you take a square root of a negative, you will get an imaginary number, not a real number. So let's go ahead and look at what the square root of negative 60 is so we know what to fill into our parentheses here. We can see that the square root of negative 60, let's first split it up into a negative and the 60. So we will have negative 1 times 60. Now we'll go ahead and split those up to square root of negative 1 times square root of 60. And from here, you'll see that we picked two numbers that multiply by each other to give us 60, and I picked 5 and 12. From here, I went ahead and split the square root of 5 and square root of 12 up, and then I can go ahead and break the square root of 12 down even further into 3 and 4 if I wanted to. 2 and 6 would have worked as well. Then I would have broke it down into separate radicands, and now I'm ready to go ahead and fill in all of my stuff. So the square root of negative 1 is equal to I. Then you will see that the square root of 5 and the square root of 3 can't be combined with anything else or reduced in any way. So we'll just multiply them back with each other, 5 times 3. And the square root of 4, this is actually a perfect square, so that equals 2. Then we're just going to go ahead and multiply. Now when you have an I, the imaginary number, you're going to treat this imaginary unit as if it's a variable. So 2 times I is on the outside of the radical. You're going to put the 2 first and the I second. And then 5 times 3 is equal to 15. So we get 2i square root of 15. So when I come back up here, the square root of negative 60 equals 2i square root of 15. And then from here, I'm just going to do my distribution property. I have negative 4i times 2i. Well, negative 4 times 2 is a negative 8, and I times I is I squared. So we have negative 8i squared square root of 15. Now on Chloe's cheat sheet notes, she let us know that I squared is the same thing as I times I, which is square root of negative 1 times square root of negative 1. And when you are multiplying like radicands, when they have the same index and the same radicand, you just have to write the radicand. So I squared is equal to negative 1. So I'm just going to come up here, and instead of I squared, I plug in the negative 1. Negative 8 times negative 1 times the square root of 15 will give me 8 square root of 15 as my final answer.